I hereby sentence him to suffer death for the murder of Eteku Gideon in count 1.
Hello and welcome to this episode of New Vision CSI Crime Stories. I'm Razia Othman.
And Odekeroyan.
We take a look at one of the most disturbing criminal cases Uganda has witnessed in recent years. The murder of 4 toddlers at Ggaba Early Childhood Development Center and the debate it has reignited about the death penalty in Uganda.
And Odekeroyan in count 4 in a manner authorized by law.
Even though courts continue to sentence convicts to death for capital offences such as murder and aggravated robbery, Uganda has not carried out an execution since 1999. So the big question is, does the death sentence still carry real weight? Today, Advocate Joshua Byamazima helps us break down the conviction and sentencing of Christopher Okello Onyum, his intent to appeal, the legal process surrounding death row in Uganda, and the country's history with executions, plus the growing human rights debate surrounding capital punishment.
No, my lord.
You don't even want to apologize to Uganda?
Last Friday, the High Court convicted Christopher Okello Onyum for the gruesome killing of 4 toddlers at Ggaba Early Childhood Development Center on April 2nd. After nearly 3 weeks of trial, the court found that Okello deliberately and unlawfully killed Ryan Odeke, aged 1.5 years, Kisha Agenoruoth Otim, aged 2, Gideon Eteku, aged 2.5, and Ignatius Serunyange, also aged 2.5. The court rejected Okello's insanity defense.
Should I take it that you don't have anything to say?
Yes, my lord. I don't have anything to say.
Okello, who is 39 years old, is Ugandan by birth and also a United States citizen. High Court Judge Alice Komuhanji Kauka sentenced him to death, describing the case as among the rarest of the rare. She noted that even probation officers had not encountered such brutality in the area. Thank you so much for joining us. Given the brutality of the Ggaba murders and the public attention surrounding the open trial, what legal factors may have led Justice Alice Komuhanji Kauka to describe the case as among the rarest of the rare and ultimately impose the death sentence?
You see, under the Uganda's sentencing guidelines, a court may only impose death where life imprisonment is demonstrably inadequate. In other words, death is not supposed to be a routine punishment. It is meant for cases where the brutality, calculation, and consequences of the crime shock the conscience of society. Children, they are defenseless. They can't hurt a person. Basically, they are the most vulnerable members of the society. And secondly, that the killings were spontaneous. You see, the court found evidence suggesting planning and deliberation. On the first day of April and the second day of April, this man was in the same place twice. He rightly directed himself. He operated a motor vehicle. He opened the right door of the car. Something really that is unsuggestive of a person who has got a mental illness or a psychiatric illness. At least there should have been perhaps glitches and glapses of the human normal motor skill that you would expect. A person driving a car from Chanja to Ggaba with all those traffic lights, motorists on the road. I think that stability alone, as rightly weighed by the judge in the decision, those are not something that you would expect a person with a psychiatric illness to be able to do. And then you will see in the decision of the learned justice, in those aggravation factors, They also include that away from suggestion of planning and deliberation, Okello had 3 knives carried in the school. The day of the 2nd of April, when he went to the school, he had 2 knives in his stockings, and then the other knife, the one that he was arrested with.
The judge also affirmed Okello's right to appeal against both the conviction and the sentence within 14 days. But behind the weight of that sentence lies another reality. Uganda has not executed anyone in more than 2 decades. According to Uganda Prison's spokesperson Frank Baine, the death penalty still exists within Uganda's legal framework, but it has not been enforced because only the president can sign a death warrant authorizing executions, and that power has not been exercised since 1999. Baine said the president has declined to sign execution warrants based on personal beliefs against taking life. And he added that if the president chose to sign, executions would proceed according to the law. Legally and practically, does the death penalty still serve as an effective punishment or deterrent within Uganda's justice system?
Personally, as an individual, I think with Uganda's legal position today, it reflects a little bit of compromise. Yes, after the decision of the Supreme Court in Susan Kigula 416 versus the Attorney General, that court in the Supreme Court, it agreed with the decision of the Court of Appeal that the death penalty remains constitutional but not mandatory. Because before the sentencing to death, that case rightly argued by Professor Katende, Sim Katende, and then Frederick, their argument was that our Ugandan laws, the imposition of a death penalty was mandatory. And the Court of Appeal said, no, that was unconstitutional. But then the death penalty itself would remain constitutional. The Court of Appeal agreed with that position, and same the Supreme Court. So the death penalty as it is written in our law books is imposed but discretionary in the rarest of the rarest circumstances, like this of Okello. 4 children. I do remember candidly the argument of the state attorney. He noted that the Honorable Justice Mike Chibita, then serving at the High Court in Uganda versus Katoka jury, he sentenced the man for killing only 1 child to suffer to life imprisonment. How about a man that has killed 4?
The ruling also established that if a prisoner is not executed within 3 years after exhausting all appeals, the death sentence is automatically commuted to a 50-year prison term. According to Baine, there were originally 102 inmates who qualified for commutation, but 9 have since moved from death row after meeting the 3-year threshold and having their sentences reduced to 50 years in prison. Currently, Uganda has 93 inmates on death row, including 2 women, and all are still undergoing the appeals process. Uganda's last execution took place on April 27, 1999. Haj Musa Sebirumbi was hanged at Luzira Upper Prison. Sebirumbi was a former Uganda People's Congress chairperson and operative of the Obote-era National Security Agency, commonly known as NASA. He had been convicted on multiple counts of murder linked to the Luwero Triangle conflict. One of the major charges involved the 1981 killing of Edidian Muchibi Lutamaguzi, who reportedly refused under torture to reveal the whereabouts of Yoweri Museveni and his fighters. Witnesses testified that Sebirumbi dragged Lutamaguzi from his house, assaulted him, and fatally struck him. After nearly a decade on death row, Sebirumbi was executed alongside 27 other inmates for the 1981 killings in Kikandwa village, Semuto. When asked what role the prison hangman has played since executions stopped in 1999, Baine explained that the hangman is still a prison officer but is now assigned other special duties in the absence of executions. The sentencing of Okello has reignited wider global and national debate about whether the death penalty should still exist. How does Uganda balance Article 22 of the Constitution, which allows deprivation of life in accordance with the law, against growing international and local human rights pressure to abolish capital punishment?
There is a process, and all these are safeguards. Like I have rightly stated, part of the safeguards of this right, of taking away this right, is under Article 121, that even before execution, a report must be written to the Prerogative of Mercy Committee to consider whether this person was remorseful, could be rehabilitated into society, to see to it that the execution is not hurriedly done. What has changed is that now courts insist that the punishment of death must be imposed sparingly, carefully, and with full judicial discretion. What I can agree with as a person, the death penalty as imposed now should be restricted to only punishments where a life is taken on the other end. But where we have, in our sentencing guidelines, we have a death penalty for rape and defilement, aggravations, which I believe perhaps that argument can be had. But where a life is taken, then a death penalty, upon confirmation of the Supreme Court, a death penalty should ensue.
Doreen Chaze, the Regional Director for Sub-Saharan Africa at Penal Reform International, also argued that the death penalty has never been reliably proven to deter criminal behavior effectively. Not everyone agrees that the death penalty should be abolished entirely. Crispin Kaheru, a member of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, said Uganda has taken a cautious approach by retaining the death penalty in law while avoiding executions since 1999. From a human rights perspective, he said that the focus must remain on due process, fairness, and proportionality.
On my last question, since Justice Komhanji affirmed Okello's right to appeal within 14 days, what possible legal grounds could his defense team raise at the Court of Appeal or Supreme Court to challenge either the conviction or the sentence itself? Interesting. I wouldn't say that I'm conflicted in this one, but you see, now, although the trial court imposed the death sentence, Christopher Okello still has his constitutional right to appeal the decision. Yes, there could be some grounds that perhaps he could try and exploit. And with the ingenuity of lawyers, perhaps they could come up with several grounds to appeal the decision. If I'm to just think out loud, play the devil's advocate, one is perhaps they may argue that the trial court wrongly rejected the insanity defense or failed to sufficiently appreciate the ministry's responsibility. Perhaps they might challenge whether the prosecution proved the precise intent necessary to justify a death sentence. Also, maybe it could argue that the sentence itself was very excessive and that life imprisonment would have been sufficient punishment. And perhaps lastly, they may raise concerns about the impact of the massive public attention surrounding the open trial, arguing that the publicity risked undermining the perception of impartiality given the trial was in a public place. But which other place would be better to try a person than a place where he committed the offense?
Thank you so much, Joshua Biamazima.
Thank you so much.
And that's it for this episode of New Vision CSI Crime Stories podcast. I'm Razia Athman. Does the death sentence still carry weight? Was originally published in the New Vision, written by Michael Odeng and Farouk Kasule. Thank you for listening.